Ah, we're good. Hi, good evening. It's Ruben Abramov. And tonight I have as my guest on the origins and the biblical development of the Siddur. Like, how did prayers get started? I thought, who better than asking Julius Weil to collaborate with me on this in-depth exploration of the development of the Siddur, the development of the prayer book from the time of Moses until today. And how did it get started? How is it showing up today? And where is it going to the next generation in the future? So welcome, Julius.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you for having me on tonight. This is a topic that is actually near and dear. Anybody who takes out a prayer book in the morning or the afternoon, or just because they need some help from God, should be very interested in this. So this is a very good topic.
So there are certain beliefs that when I would explain to people about Judaism, they're asking me, are you serious? We Jews used to believe in that? So let's...
And we still do. And we still do.
How so? Will
nothing goes away. The only thing we don't do, except for one crazy group in Jerusalem, is animal sacrifices.
Okay. So tonight I wanted to talk about the Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the priests, the Kohanim.
Wait a minute. Before you go on, let's set it straight. It's not their blessing. It's God's blessing through the priests. They're the channelers of the blessing that God wants to bestow on the people.
Exactly. So it should not be called Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohen, the priests. It's actually an instruction by God, then to Moses, and then he turned it over to his brother Aharon, Aaron. And there are some people that actually refer to it as the Aaronic blessing. They don't call it the priestly blessing. Why? Well, Julius, who was the first Kohen?
Moses, and he wasn't one. The priests actually got it by default because it was supposed to go to the firstborn. They were supposed to be all the priests. And then through the sin of the golden calf, they lost it, and it went into Moses' family. He was actually a Levi, and all the priests were. And then Aaron's family became the family of priests. So that's the lineage of how it all happened.
So if I understand you correctly, it was originally that the leader of each one of the tribes was supposed to have this spiritually elevated purpose amongst the nation. If I understood you correctly?
Yeah, that too, but also it was supposed to be like every firstborn of a family was supposed to go into the priesthood. Now, in the Catholic religion, it is a very big honor if a son joins the priesthood. We don't have that. It goes specifically to from generation to generation to specifically ones who already have the lineage that date back to Aaron.
So let's go back into the year 2448, from the day of creation until the Israelites were part of the greatest jailbreak of all time. And they left Egypt, and then they go out into the Sinai desert. And this is where we had the revelation. As a matter of fact, Julius, this week in the Torah portion, in the biblical portion, is the revelation at Mount Sinai.
That is correct.
Now, it goes that far back. So let's just say
It may actually go back even further. It may go
Go
back.
ahead.
It may go back to Jacob, because when Jacob was blessing Joseph's sons, he gave them a blessing. Yeah, Ephraim and Manasseh, as we say, or Ephraim and Manasseh, to our listeners or viewers who are not familiar with the Hebrew. And he gave them a blessing, and it may well have been the same blessing, because the words are very nice and very, Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. God should bless you and keep you. It's like, and even in modern times, to jump ahead, let's go from the past to the present. Fiddler on the Roof, one of the songs right at the Sabbath opening is the Shabbos prayer that Tevye sings, which is the priestly blessing that's given every Friday night by parents to their children, both sons and daughters. They get the priestly blessing. So it may have started way back, but it's still very relevant today.
And I know every time I get to bless my daughter on a Friday night, it's something that she looks forward to. So this blessing endures. Now, if you think about the 4 original prayers in a prayer book, can you imagine? You could actually be done in about 6 minutes. You could be, the 10 Commandments used to be in the prayer book. Then you had the Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel. Then here you had the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, Aaronic blessing, how we're describing it. So those are 3 of them. And you also have possibly from Moses that he wrote some of the chapters of Psalms, of Tehillim, because it says, Tefillah leMoshe ish ha'Elohim. So this is part of the 150 chapters of Psalms that you have possibly going back to that time. Now, you have this amazing the communication from God to Moses. And if you look in the prayer book, it says, Barchenu babracha, bless us with this blessing, hamishuleshet. I must have heard that 1,000 times as a kid. What does it mean? It means that this blessing is in 3 parts. Shalosh means hamishuleshet. And this is written in the Torah, al yedei Moshe avdecha, that it is written by the hand of Moses, that Moses was up on Mount Sinai, and God is giving him dictation, and it's like a stenographer's notes. You could picture that. Now, what happened first?
But also, luscious is another thing. It's also an abundance. 1 is singular. 2 is, I got 2. Mushuleshet, I have a lot. So it's another language for give us an abundance of blessing. So, again, it's very important, that it's not just a single blessing.
Guess how many words are in the Birkat Kohanim, in the priestly blessing?
I'm not a good guesser. Why don't you tell us?
There's 15. And these 15 words actually equal the abbreviated name of God, Yud and Hey, 10 and 5. So there is a paradigm, which is actually a biblical origin of this English word, because paradigm is para and then D-I-G-M. What is that in Hebrew? Dugma, the pattern. So here you have the paradigm of the 15 words in the blessing also is a godly and divinely scripted message. It's very, very interesting how these things all interconnect. So here's the 15 words. It says, Yivarechecha. And it's interesting. There is the Chazan, there is the cantor, and he is prompting the different Kohanim that are in the audience. Julius, do you know why they would do that?
I'm sorry I didn't hear the question, but he's doing that because you don't know the pedigree of these priests. It's a synagogue. People, you have members, non-members, people walk in. They say they're priests. Okay, they may not be familiar with the words. So the cantor has to set them up for it. So, you have this whole song. If you go back to the days of the temple, there was a platform. The priest got up, and it was not just one, it was a family, because each week it was a different family of priests that handled it. So there were twice a year, the families would rotate. So you had 24 families, so they would rotate. The Hebrew calendar is shorter, and they would get up on this platform, the entire family, and they would all raise their hands and reach out their hands, make the symbol that we're all familiar with. The one they tell you don't do this unless you're a priest, right? Separate the fingers, and again, it's 10, God's name, the whole thing as you were talking about, and and they would say the blessing. There was probably no break in it. It was probably all said as one word, the same way as when you bless your daughter, which is probably truer to what was going on then. But you had a mass of that, and the people that would make the pilgrimage to the temple on those holidays that were pilgrimage holidays would then receive the blessing. And that's what it was. And and obviously then if you're there with your friends and you're surrounded in this courtyard, you get this, you probably get a very elevated feeling of spirituality. In the synagogue, I'll just move it along here, is the priests get up and they take off their shoes, because the priests in the temple did not wear shoes. They get up by the bima, and they recite it with the cantor, and then there's a pause between every five, and there's a Yehi Ratzon that some people say and some people just don't. The custom also is you don't look at the priests, because when they're doing this, God's Shekhinah supposedly is there, and you should not look at that directly. So people cover themselves with their prayer shawls. Some people mistakenly turn around, which you should never do in a synagogue, and they receive the priestly blessings.
I wanted to mention that the platform in the Beit Adonai, it's not referred to as Beit HaMikdash. Everybody calls it Beit HaMikdash. It was actually the house of God. And in the house of God, there was a staircase. And the staircase was called the Duchan. And today, it became a verb. It was a noun. It was a place. Now they refer to it as Duchaning. The origin of it was that is where the Kohanim, the priests, would stand. And what you had in those days, 3,000 years ago, is, like Julius, you were saying, many people were illiterate. It didn't mean that they were stupid. It just means that they didn't know how to read. And you could see this even in the Hallel, in the prayers on the holidays of the Psalms. It would be Hodu la Hashem ki tov, and the congregation, or some people, the Kang, would answer Ki Leolam Chazdo. So here it was interactive between the leader and the people that were being led and following. Actually,
it's very tribal.
Yes. That I once asked Nathanael Hirschtig, the Chazan of the Hampton Synagogue, and I said, is there a similarity between Chazon Yeshayahu, the vision of Isaiah, sounds like the Chazan? And guess what he told me? You want to guess?
I would say he said yes.
He said like this: a prophet could see into the future, and the cantor knew what tunes he was going to sing to the congregation.
Oh my gosh.
It has a similar root word to it. So here you have this blessing that for the past 3,500 years, either every day, every Shabbat, and for sure every holiday, it was sung and it was chanted to the people that were in attendance of the services. Now, you mentioned earlier about that you're not allowed to look at the Kohanim, the priests, that you also have other customs that we have in the prayers that we should know about. But I want to get a little bit onto a tangent about, was this blessing ever used to ward off evil?
I'm so glad you got there. Absolutely. In the Talmud, there's talk of amulets, and that they're, and that they work against spirits, they work against shadim and mazikin and things that want to do you harm. And the proof of this is that in Masechta Shabbos, in the Tractate of Shabbos, it talks about that if you need an amulet, you're for whatever reason to make you well, you're allowed to carry it outside on Shabbos. That you're allowed to carry it, but not just any amulet. It has to be written by someone who knows how to write amulets, so that there's an importance to it. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to write down, these 5 words. Here you are. It has to be somebody who has the spirituality and knowledge of what to write, because the connection of words and combinations do make a difference. And this one, the priestly blessing, is one of those. It has, like you said, 15 words. It repeats God's name, which is very important. It has a lot of power. The fact that it is used, to bless children and all that. So all that does come together for that reason. It's something that today, it's like we started off by people wearing stars of David or the Chai, which means life. That's the simplistic. That's the entry point. There are hundreds of different combinations of amulets that people wear. This one is sort of the next level because it's one that's very known. It's not something you need to find some Kabbalistic person for. Yes, that's the one that protects you against Lilith. There were bowls that had amulets written around them to keep Lilith, who was supposedly Adam's first wife, away from you. And families would hire bowl makers to write this out specifically. They were found in Alexandria. They've been found in other places. And they actually have a picture of Lilith in the center, which is very interesting. Some say that she's chained up, but when you look at her, she actually looks very powerful. I'm actually a big fan of Lilith. There you go. I think that she's gotten a raw deal. I think that she's actually a very spiritually strong person and should not be chased away, but we should find a way how to incorporate her. But that's just me. I'm a rebel.
Now, you have these incantation bowls. They were Jewish, and that you're telling people that a man would come to the front door in Babylonia and speak to the lady of the house, and he would inquire, do you have a concern that there are these shadim, that there are these evil spirits that are in your home? If you think that, I happen to have a prayer, and I could write a prayer specifically. And he would hold the bowl in his hand, and then he would write in the bowl, in a circular way, a prayer to repel the shadim, these demons. This is Jewish. And they would bury the bowls in the ground like radar, that they would go whoop, 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 and they would push away from the home these evil spirits. Now, to the reverse, we keep a mezuzah. We keep this prayer on our doorposts. That is to attract holiness and spirituality.
Well, we're commanded to do that. That's not something that the bowls are something that came out because especially because of Lilith, which was the most popular one, because people were worried, especially childbirth was very dangerous, and Lilith was supposedly steal children, and so therefore, if you're a homeowner and your wife is pregnant, you certainly want to protect your kids. But the mezuzah, which is a standard one, that's written, in the Chumash, that you have to put that on your door, and it has the essence of prayers on there. It has the Shema, the 3 chapters. You know, it's all the first one. That's in the Tefillin. The Shema is on the first one. Is the one that's on the mezuzah. And if you've ever watched Ben-Hur, he goes and kisses the mezuzah when he comes into the house.
That's beautiful. Now, Mr. Shlomo Musayov, who was a teacher of mine, explained to me that when you got the commandment at Mount Sinai that you have to put a mezuzah, you have to put this amulet on your doorpost, there was no structured houses yet. They lived in tents. Then he said to me, originally, these scrolls that were written were like chimes, and that today people reach up and they kiss the mezuzah. But the origin of it, according to him, and he would be very creative in his explanations, he said that it would be hanging on a string, and that when you would walk into the home, into the tent, you would push your way to get in, and your hand would make contact with the mezuzah, and that would be your way of saying, I am earthly, God is heavenly, and let's merge together, that we are a intertwined and inseparable soul with the Creator. This was, to me, fascinating to understand these energies. So we discussed a little bit about warding off evil. And I think that's very, very important, because people thought differently than we think today. And now, today, you have rabbis that have Kabbalistic understandings of things. And I happen to have gotten a copy of this book many, many years ago. And what I was explained is there are very, very few copies of this book ever printed. And I look at this book, and it's like spooky. And here you can see, over here is one of the secret names of God. Remember, we're told that there's a 70-letter secret name of God, and there literally are hundreds and hundreds of secret names of God in this book. This one fascinated me, Julius. This is, whatever those words are, it says that this are the names that were carved into the staff of Moses. And you were telling me he had more than one. Is that right?
Yes, he did. He also had the one that we know as the copper staff, which is what the symbol of medicine is, the one with the serpent on it. And that had God's name on it as well. And that was a very powerful staff. It lasted in way till like the Second Temple, when one of the kings saw that the people were using it as a deity, and basically destroyed it. And that's the last we saw of it. Actually, it was a Roman king, but he was Jewish.
I'm so glad that we're having this conversation together tonight. It's fascinating that bouncing off each other, things that we know and we're sharing with each other. And if anybody who's listening has any questions, you can write in the questions, and we'll be happy to do our best to answer them.
I'm going to ask one more amulet thing. The oddest amulet in the times of the Second Temple or post-Second Temple, and this is written in the Masechta of Shabbos, was people would carry crucifixion nails around their neck, and that was supposed to be good luck. Certainly not for the person who had been crucified, but if you got one, it was mind-boggling. You read this, it's like you got one from crucifixion. It was one of those things like, this thing was really bad, and it already has done bad. Now it should be a good luck for me. So, and you would carry this around your neck. So, and it was permitted by the rabbis. This was proper procedure. This was something that they said, yes, absolutely. Don't walk away from it. Yes, you're doing a good job. Stay safe. It's like There was no argument about it.
Like, who would believe that? And you're saying in the Talmud.
It's in the Talmud. Absolutely.
So I find it fascinating how Judaism, in the word of Giddy Greenstein, we have flexigidity, that Judaism is rigid. However, built into every tall skyscraper is some flexibility. And that how we went from generation to generation with certain belief systems. For example, nobody could have a prophecy outside of the land of Israel until the temple was destroyed, the first temple, and all the Jews are out there in the Babylonian exile, and that here comes Ezekiel and Zechariah, and they say, V'haya Hashem, and God will be the king over all the world. It went from being a geocentric religion that you had to be in Jerusalem and you could connect to God only in Jerusalem. How did that happen? This is one of the explanations of you couldn't give up on worshiping God even though you were outside of the land of Israel. So they morphed the religion in order to be more accepting of everybody globally.
Well,
so
yes, totally globally. But look, it's like if you look historically, Jewish settlements were always around. Even in the days of the first temple, they were probably in Greece. Jews were not just in Israel. The fact that they were exiles and they were forced out made it seem like they were. But they went wherever the business world took them. They would set up, and they would still have a connection to to Israel. I mean, certainly they were in Egypt the entire time, still, even after the Exodus. And once they settled, there were alliances with Egypt and other countries and empires.
So, coming back to how you had different Jewish communities. First of all, the word Jew comes from the Hebrew word Yehudah or Yehudim. That was one of the 12 tribes. And it was mentioned last Shabbat. I was at the Parkey Synagogue, and the rabbi said something very interesting, how the Jews, the Israelites at the time, they left Egypt with great wealth. But he said, you know something? That's not enough. Just to have a lot of money, that's not the idea. The idea is, if you're a businessman and you go out on a business trip pre-COVID, you would sit with the people that you would work with and trade and do commerce, and that they would see, hey, this is a human being. He's from the Jewish religion. He conducts himself properly. I admire what Judaism stands for. So it wasn't enough just to have a lot of money and sit at home, with a bank account in Switzerland. It was more important to get out there and share God's word with other people.
But even in the times of again, Jacob, when Joseph is taken out of prison, how is he introduced to Pharaoh? They say, oh, he's one of those Jews. There were other Jews besides Jacob's family all over the place. They were known because if he was the only one, they'd say, oh, this is Jacob's kid. But they said, no, he's a Jew. They were Jews from the time of Abraham on. They were people identified as Yehudim, people of God, because that's where the name also comes from. Yehuda was one of the tribes, but it's Yud-Hey is God's name, as we said. So yes, there were Jews, people who believed in monotheism and the one God.
Incredible. So I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to work through the priestly blessing, the Aaronic blessing, the blessing that was from way back and till today. And this is going forward, that we have this wonderful set of 15 words. Yivarechecha. May God bless you. It uses the word Adonai. That is the name of God. V'yishmerecha. And he should guard you. Can you imagine God guarding you? How can you feel vulnerable if you say, I'm protected? I have somebody looking over my shoulder. The pause. Then it continues. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha, that may God make his face shine unto you. You go, hey, wait a minute. God is not physical. Why is it using this fancy word, anthropomorphic word? It is just a manifestation of God's energy.
But also,
And
you should follow it. You should follow it as it's written. It's not that God's light; it's the light. It's Ya'er is first, the light of God. So it's that's more true, I think, to what it is.
And then v'yichuneka, and that he should be gracious to you. Sometimes you describe someone, they have chen, that they're sweet. Can you imagine having a sweetness? How many people have a contentious relationship with their mother or father or whomever? But here, this is God sharing with the world, I want to love you. I want you to feel connected to me. I want you to feel safe. And then it says, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, that may God lift up his face unto you, v'yasein lecha shalom, and that you should live and God should give you peace, shalom. To me, Julius, it's so interesting when we use the phrase Shabbat Shalom. Now, shalom in Hebrew, when you see someone, you go, shalom, hi. The greeting, hello. When you say goodbye, you also say shalom. But there's a third meaning, and that is to have peacefulness. So when you say Shabbat Shalom, one, I believe, is you're not only welcoming the Shabbat, like hello Shabbos, but you're also saying this Sabbath should be the day in the week where there's peacefulness and tranquility.
Yeah.
So
but there's one other thing, if I can check. This last paragraph that you read,
please.
This last one is very important. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. This goes again back to the sin of the golden calf. God turns his face away. Moses, there's the argument Moses has with God to save the Jewish people. God is basically willing to drop the mountain on him and be done, start over. And Moses argues, and we have the whole thing, the prayer that we say, and all that comes from there, where Moses is pleading for God, show us, give us some mercy here. And this is the answer that we're hoping that he changes his mind, because God says to Moses, he goes, okay, it's basically, again, I have to go back to movies. It's Goodfellas. When Paulie gives Henry Hill money and says, I have to turn my back on you. God says, okay, Moses, you have it, but you will never see my face again. He's very strong about that. He says, I will listen to you. I will not destroy the people, but you will never see my face again. Because Moses used to have a face-to-face with God. Now you only see my back. So this last part of the blessing calls on God to reverse that judgment, to basically show us your face again. Let's let bygones be bygones. Let it rest. You've already punished enough generations. Let's go back to our relationship we had with God, which was one of face-to-face.
Beautiful, Julius. Now, let's talk about today. And what about this coronavirus? Is this some kind of modified Armageddon, where we used to hear from the prophets that the world is going to be at odds with each other and the two dominant superpowers are going to fight it out, and that the Israelites are going to be stampeded in the middle? Is that what we think is going to happen?
Let's hope
Is
not.
is there a global Armageddon occurring right now, Julius?
I'd like to take a positive approach that it's not. It's like, again, going back to the Bible itself. You talk about the plagues that afflicted the Israelites in the desert when God punished them. The numbers of deaths were actually minimal, 24,000. Look, there were millions of people in the desert. He wiped out 24,000. He wiped out 40,000. The numbers are not. So this is the same as with this virus. The mortality, while it hits us, is strong. The number or percentage of deaths is less and less. So therefore, this is something that, just as I said to I had this conversation with Nathaniel as well. He said, he goes, "Why do you think we have this?" And I said, "It's because we need to slow down." If you remember before the virus, as you were saying, business trips, this, that, we were always rushing. And what this 1 year has taught us is we don't need to rush. It all gets, with all the hardships that this has caused, we're surviving. We're working from home. We're having a slower way of doing things, and it's okay. So if God has put this on us, I like to take it's the positive approach. Like you said, shalom, peace, slow down. Don't mingle so much. Don't go running and being and doing and have to be everywhere. Slow down. Isolate a little bit. Introspective. Try to get that relationship back with yourself and make everything right there. And then, vaccine, time, we'll be okay.
Love that. That was so beautiful. What this virus has taught me, I realized at my dentist's office. I go to Brooklyn.
I do as well for my dentist. How funny.
To my dentist, Dr. Bodek.
I have Dr. Lazarus.
Okay. So there I am.
Plug. That's nice.
Year after year, I go to the dentist's office, and there are people sitting in the waiting room. I'm from a different neighborhood. I'm from a different part of town. However, this year, I realized that everybody has something in common with each other now. Beforehand, you're from there, I'm from here, I do this, you do that. Not anymore. We're all in it together, and we all look out for each other. And that's what I found to be the common denominator, where we used to separate. I'm not like you, you're not like me, you don't live here, I live there, I go here, I do that. Erased.
And the mask does that too.
Go ahead.
I can't make the judgment. Do you have good teeth? Do you have bad teeth? Who are you? You can't see me.
We're all human beings, and we all have feelings, and we all want to feel heard, and we all have become better listeners. I remember nobody would talk to me. I go to Fairway Supermarket. You just go this way, that way. Now, I look at somebody. I go, hi. They go, hi. What's your name? My name is this. I go, where are you from? Suddenly, I'm having a conversation with a total stranger because they're cooped up in their house, or they just haven't had a chance to share what they're going through with other people. Times are changing. And I think that we have this special sensitivity to how does the other person feel. If there was a role reversal, what would it be like to feel like they feel? And I think that my father taught me something. He never would leave his house, without change in his pocket. I go, Dad, what's that about? He goes, watch. And he would take me, he was a furrier, and he would take me to Madison Square Garden, Pennsylvania station, and we would walk up the stairs, and each and every person that was sitting on the ground that held his hand up, my father would put something in their hand. He said, because you one day will hold your hand up to God. You want God to put something into your hand. And what you give is what you're going to get, Reuben. See? We all got to look out for each other. Julius, I have had the best time with you.
We
This
always
was
do.
so interesting. You enhanced the quality of this class. Julius, this goes out to thousands of people, and you're making a big impact on people's understanding of why they do things in life. What is a blessing all about? How do we establish continuity? So I want to personally thank you, and I want to invite you that we should revisit doing this again next week. So
Well, all right,
hopefully,
whenever. And to go back
okay.
to the blessing, the
Ah,
modernization was, of course, by Leonard Nimoy, and it's written by Gene Roddenberry. Live long and prosper, which is another way of our own way of modernizing it and yet still keeping it.
God bless you, Julius.
You all your
Thank
viewers.
God. God bless us all. Good
Amen.
evening.
Good evening.
Take care.